Welcome to The Survivor's Cocktail,
a podcast showcasing 2 survivor stories each week.
but with a twist. Join us for signature cocktails and visuals.
Be sure to like, subscribe, rate, and review all of our social media platforms and find us on Apple and Spotify.
And always remember, survive and thrive, ladies and gents.
The content in this episode may be sensitive for some viewers or listeners. Discretion is advised.
Episode 7.
Yes! Episode 7, A Roasted for Life.
A roasted for life. And if you guys didn't get the pun, it's like arrested for life.
Yeah.
You know?
Thank you guys so much for tuning in each week. We're so excited that you have continued to follow us and listen and rate and review and subscribe. And the love and the outreach that we've gotten has been incredible.
It's been great. And as you guys know, this is kind of a special episode. We're calling it our brunch episode, which is just a really clever way for us to get away with not being able to record earlier this week.
Yes. So we are mothers. We work full time. We have lives outside of the podcast.
Unfortunately.
Because this doesn't make us any money.
Yeah.
But we're so excited each week to still give you guys something. So we wanted to come up with a way to still deliver this week's episode. And honestly, I'm excited. I like this.
Yes. And I do want to just real quick get it out of the way, but normally I call my husband, we're technically fiancés, but we're going to go with husband because we've been together for so long, but here to help corral my young child, my 2-year-old, and obviously it's the morning, he's at work, so I'm going to do my best to edit all of it out, but you may hear a little cute voice in the background. Just know he is being taken care of, and he's fine.
No children were harmed in the making of this podcast.
No. But we have some great stories for you. We're sipping on our coffee bevies right now, and I think it's time to dive in.
Let's kick it off this week.
All right. Cheers to this week's survivors.
Cheers. So my cheers this week is for the amazing Kathy Kleiner.
Yay.
In January of 1978, 20-year-old Kathy Kleiner was attending Florida State University. So she was a member of the Chi Omega sorority and lived in the sorority house with the Chi Omega sisters. And at this time, the campus was felt to be extremely safe and secure, and it was not uncommon for people to feel comfortable walking around late at night or early in the morning. After a somewhat long night of studying for an upcoming test, Kathy Kleiner and her roommate, Karen Chandler, decided to head to bed. So while they slept at about 3 a.m., their bedroom door opened, and the sound of the bedroom door, although it wasn't super uncommon, obviously having so many roommates, it did wake Kleiner up just slightly. Mm-hmm. And then the following noises were like someone was stumbling into the bedroom.
So like they weren't familiar with the room.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that then kind of started to rouse her from her sleep. And through her kind of hazy sleep fog, she looked and saw a man holding a large log, essentially a piece of firewood.
Oh my God.
So she couldn't even really comprehend what was happening, but she saw him rear it up and just bring it down on her hard. At the time, she said it wasn't so much pain as much as it was just a thud. And she saw then he turned to her roommate, raised it up, and brought it down on her roommate. So he continued to attack the girls, and as she started to wake up even more and realize what was happening, he realized she was still alive. He turned on her, went to attack her another time. So in all of this activity, that time he attacked her, she started to feel the pain. She had, at this point, the blow crushed her jaw. So she had broken her jaw. It had torn her cheek all the way back.
Oh my God.
She bit her tongue almost off. Her shoulder was shattered. The impact had just damaged so much that she started to really feel pain.
And just, I mean, that too, like, this is so mild, but like even when you like bite the side of your cheek, And you just it keeps bugging you. So that obviously is kind of like a sensitive.
Yeah.
To have it just like.
And once all that pain set in. So she recalled that the parallel twin beds were so close to each other that he was able to just quickly transition between hitting the two girls.
It's only like a dorm-sized room. I mean, it's pretty small.
Exactly.
If you're looking at our visuals.
Yes, if you're looking at our visuals, you can see. But yeah, it's a very small area. So he just had to transition from one girl to the other. As he was attacking Kathy, at another point, light came through the curtains and illuminated the room. And in that moment, she was able to look up at his face. He looked at her, and then he took off. So she believes that he was scared that he was caught. After the attack, not realizing that two of her sorority sisters, Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy, had also been attacked and killed, Kathy's roommate, Karen Chandler, left the room and went to go get help. The lights that flooded the room were from the headlights of a car that was pulling into the driveway. It was another sorority sister being dropped off by her boyfriend. They had gone out on a late night date.
Thank God.
So by chance, she was coming home at that time and his headlights came through the curtains. And if you're looking at the last visual, they always kept those curtains open and it was essentially a wall of window. So that light came right in at that moment. And
timing, man.
Those two young individuals came into the house as well as Karen Chandler was ascending stairs, I believe, to find help, and they encountered her. So they called the campus police, who were only blocks away. So campus police rushed to the site, the scene, and began investigating. And when they initially got there, Karen Chandler, the roommate of Kathy Kleiner, was the first individual they saw. And they said it appeared that almost every bone in her face was broken. She was extremely enthusiastic, or she was pushing them to go check on her roommate.
She was
Kathy
worried
Kleiner.
about her, yeah.
And when they entered the room, they saw Kathy Kleiner sitting on her bed, cross-legged, holding her face, and just rocking back and forth, moaning in pain.
Oh, I cannot even imagine.
One of the officers actually said it appeared that her jaw was only hanging on by one hinge, and a jaw should not look like that.
No. You know what? Oh my God. It reminds me of the American Horror Story clown.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Ugh,
so little did they know, the same man also went on to attack another woman just blocks away. Cheryl Thomas, who was a dance major at Florida State University, was also assaulted and brutalized by a man. She said that he snuck in through her kitchen window, which was, the kitchen was parallel to her bed, or on the other side of her bedroom, snuck in through the kitchen window, and he assaulted her. And it was actually her neighbors who heard loud thuds, and then they heard her sobbing and moaning in pain. And when they tried to call her, they could hear her phone ringing, but she wasn't answering. So they knew something was wrong, and thank goodness that their walls were so thin.
Yeah.
So through evidence discovered at the Chi Omega house, including a bite mark on one of the deceased sorority sisters, and testimony from the surviving victims, they all eventually surmised that the women had been victimized by the same man, and it was the infamous escaped convict, Ted Bundy.
Motherfucker.
Piece of shit.
We definitely don't want to talk about him, but man, is there a lot of information out there. As
many people know, Bundy has been charged, or he was, at that moment, he had been charged with murder in Colorado, was in a Colorado prison system, and he had escaped and traveled to Florida while on the run.
Second escape.
Yes. So, Kleiner needed, obviously, quite some time to heal, both physically and mentally. But as soon as she was able to speak, which was about 9 weeks after she had to have her jaw wired shut for that amount of time, could not eat solids, she found purpose and healing through the fight, through her testimony. She testified in court, and she found power in fighting Ted Bundy and making sure that he was going to be put away for life.
I love
or
that.
Put to death.
I love that. And this is something I love about our podcast. We really highlight victims who are just fucking strong. Exactly. And they are the ones to put the nail in their fucking, you know, the person who attacks them's coffin. I love that.
Yes. And she even said during the court proceedings, she would maintain eye contact and would not break eye contact, because in those moments, in that span of staring into his eyes, she was taking power away from him. She said at first he was something to be feared, but eventually she pitied him. She stole it back through that eye contact and asserting her power. So in the years that followed, Kleiner, unlike most of the other victims, she leaned heavily into the true crime world. The other victims, understandably, they pulled away from the attention and notoriety, but Kleiner continued to give interviews. She continued to speak with people and raise awareness, and also research and learn as much as she could about the evils that could result in what happened to her. Mm-hmm. And she found continued healing. So she carried over what she created in court for herself. She carried that through the decades that followed and fully immersed herself and found even more healing through that knowledge. And she's also read everything that's been written about Ted Bundy. And it's even, I've read that she had influence on the books that were written by Anne Rule. So she even did events like Crime Con, where she spoke openly about this. And she said events like that just help her gain more of herself back.
Well, I think like true crime, you know, because when I first kind of talked to my family about my interest in true crime, it was very confusing to them, because they're like, why would you like something so kind of morbid? But I think the thing about true crime is it's not like that we really like the crimes. It's interesting, I think, to see how people can be. But also for me, I learn a hell of a lot. And I feel like if, when these situations, if it were to happen to me, this knowledge that I kind of pick up might help me. Yeah. And, I think that's someone who's had this happen to her, and for her to have an interest kind of just shows that it is a very powerful, I think, interest. And
it's like empowering.
Yeah.
You get all of this knowledge on how to survive yourself, and also what to look for. It makes us more aware of, like Ted Bundy is a good example. It makes us more aware that not everybody who's dangerous looks like they're dangerous on the surface. Or, we become hyper-focused on a specific box we have crime in, but in reality, it expands your understanding of when, where, what, and who.
Right. And it, I think, too, just the knowledge of how sociopaths can come across as charming, as regular people. That's something, and now we learn more and more traits that they, that we can look out for. Go ahead.
So Kathy Kleiner, now married and living what, you could say is quote unquote a normal, essential life, she continues to be a warrior. Her injuries obviously took time to heal, but she's had countless operations, plastic surgeries. Her jaw had to be broken and reset at one point. She's continuously suffered from TMJ and even had surgeries in the more recent years to continue to relieve some of that pain and repair some of the damage done. Yeah. It's amazing. And in spite of it all, she stays strong. She's fascinated by true crime. Kleiner's attitude may be attributed to a psychological theory dubbed post-traumatic growth, PTG, in which people give meaning to a traumatic event that allows them to not only survive, but thrive.
Oh, that's such a great quote. Oh, that's so good. I love that. So we always give negative things those titles, like PTSD, and I love that they made a positive.
Yes.
So awesome.
And it just goes to show the bad things that happen to you do not mean that you need to be bad. You are not bad. You are not damaged. You can still thrive.
You know what's funny is my story ends very similar.
Yay! Well, I'm excited to hear it.
That was amazing. I want to give a cheers.
Cheers to Kathy Kleiner.
Cheers. So my story this week is on Heather Reed.
Okay.
So Heather Reed, she was about 19, almost 9 months pregnant at the time. And she and her family were kind of getting into contact with like her estranged sister, Mary Ann. And Heather and Mary Ann are half sisters. They share a father, Eric. And for some reason, Eric and Mary Ann just did not, Mary Ann didn't grow up with him. And so kind of in a act of wanting to get to know her father better, her sister better, she actually decided to move in with Heather, Eric, and Heather's mom, Laura. Mary Ann also came with 2 kids, a son who was 14 and a daughter who was 11. So when Mary Ann moved in, her and Heather became very fast, what Heather calls them as best friends. Heather had always been wanting that connection with a sister, and she felt like she finally had it. And because this was her first pregnancy, Mary Ann was actually really helping her get ready for motherhood and kind of talking her through it. From what I saw too, she was doing it by herself. She was going to be a single mom, and I think Mary Ann was as well. So just lots of connections, and again, they were kind of making up for the lost time that they didn't have in childhood. So the family, really, honestly, everybody got along very well except Eric. Eric and Mary Ann fought because Eric didn't believe that she was raising her children correctly, but also there was like an underlying issue of money. Adding 3 bodies to the household definitely added the cost. And it sounded like he was kind of, at least in his words, the only one contributing to the household. Also, Eric and Laura, years before Mary Ann moved in, had fighting problems. They argued quite a bit. Eric tended to yell at Laura. He would say that she was just very nagging towards him. But Heather later states that she never quite really saw that out of her mother, but what she did see was almost like emotional abuse from her dad, Eric, towards Laura. And then when Mary Ann moved in, Laura tended to, I don't know if she really took her side or maybe just tried to have Eric look at it from a different perspective, but that kind of added fuel to the fire because Laura was now, in his mind, siding with Mary Ann, causing them to kind of fight a little bit more. So the night of October 19th, 2015, the family kind of sat down for a family dinner. And as they were sitting down to eat, Eric made a mention about Mary Ann's son not liking vegetables, saying you need to eat them. No matter what, you need to eat them. It's food in front of you, blah, blah, blah. I can kind of picture the conversation of I paid money for this food, blah, 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 you need to eat it. And Mary Ann, I think it's that thing of you're as a child and your parent, you just automatically, even though maybe you might agree that he should eat his vegetables, just hearing it from somewhere else and how Eric delivered it pissed her off. And she's like, you don't need to tell my son what he needs to do. It's vegetables. Let's not make this into a whole fight.
Right.
Basically.
Defending her son. Yeah.
And it sounded like she probably didn't deliver it like that. I think they all yelled at each other quite a bit. So a lot of yelling. And at this point, Eric was like, you know what? You don't listen to how I think your children should be raised. I feel like I'm providing for this household. You've added money problems. I want you out. Basically tells her to move out. Then the fight kind of escalates. Laura kind of gets in and she's taking Mary Ann's side. Again, it doesn't sound like she was much of a fighter, but more was always trying to get him calm him down.
Keep the peace.
But it fueled him and it pissed him off. And I think at this point, everyone's still at the dinner table as this happens. And as this happens, somehow Eric gets a gun and he shoots Laura.
Oh my gosh.
And Heather, who's at the table, kind of turns and she watches as her mom falls from the gunshot and then sees her dad shoot her again.
Oh my God.
Then he turns the gun towards Mary Ann and shoots her. And at this point, Heather has stood up. She's standing right next to Mary Ann. And that first time that he shot her, Heather, again, 9 months pregnant, goes to her dad, starts pushing him, starts saying, leave, just leave, what are you doing? Kind of like, she's honestly in shock because even though her dad had anger issues, she never imagined this to happen. And then as Heather's trying to get him to stop, he shoots Marianne again. So again, he shot Laura twice and he shot Marianne twice. Something snaps him out of whatever's happening, and he does not kill or shoot Heather and the 2 children.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah. So whatever it is, he either realizes what happened or whatever, and still Heather is still like, what are you doing? Like, what did you just do? But like kind of in hysteric, and he looks at her and he goes, go call the police. And I do have the 911 call, and this is a 911 call that if you don't like 911 calls, please do not listen, because it is kind of hard to hear, and I just would ask that you use discretion.
Yes, skip away, friends.
My dad shot my mom, and he shot my sister. My sister stopped breathing. Your sister stopped breathing? Okay. Is she awake? No, her eyes are open.
So obviously,
Wow.
yeah, very sad. You can tell that she's still in shock of what just happened. She's mortified. She's extremely sad.
Yeah.
And then, so at this point, the police come, and he doesn't resist arrest at all. He just goes. And in this video, it showed footage of him telling the police what happened in his, like, interview. And the way this man talks is very confusing to me. So the first thing is they say, tell me what happened. And this is the sentence that he said. And again, it's stated so strangely. He says, I guess I know the use of deadly force, and I let a woman draw me off sides.
Interesting.
And even the investigator says, let a woman what? Like, he's confused. And then he said, I let her push me over the edge or something like that. So, and at this point, I don't know who he's talking about. I don't know if he's talking about Marianne. I don't know if he's talking about Laura. But I think the thing that pissed me off the most is he is not really taking ownership. He also claims to the cops that he wasn't really aiming. He just grabbed a gun and started shooting. But to me, the only people that you killed, because they did die, the only people that you killed are the ones you were arguing with. So, again, he's kind of owning up to what happened, but he's not owning. It just sounds to me like he's trying to say that she pushed him to the edge.
He's blaming the victim.
Right. And in 2018, he was actually found guilty of 2 counts of capital murder and was sentenced to death.
Oh, yeah. Capital murder, you go death penalty straight up.
He was in Arkansas.
Oh.
Yeah. So she went through her whole pregnancy having this amazing best friend, kind of helping her go through this process, to then having no one. Her mom was dead, her sister was dead, her dad was gone, and her sister's kids were actually placed with other family members.
Oh, wow.
Only 3 weeks after the horrific event, Heather actually gives birth to her baby. And she's pretty much all alone at this point. But then, this is where the story turns bright. Only a few months later, she gains custody of her niece and nephew. And she said that to her, this wasn't even a question. It's something she had to do. And at 19, now she has a newborn as well as 2 older children of her sisters. Which what's crazy to me is that her nephew's 14 and she's 19, so there's not that big of a gap. And then her story ends with her saying, I couldn't just stop and sit there. You have to continue on with your life because your story is not done yet.
Oh.
It's kind of similar to yours, yes. Right? Like, they just chose freaking survive and thrive is what they chose to do.
Exactly.
Cheers to Heather. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode, A Roasted for Life.
Keep tuning in each week and be sure to follow us on all of our social media pages, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also check us out on Patreon, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher.
Survive and thrive, ladies and gents.